Welcome, everyone. Another episode of Speak, Lead, and Grow for District 57 Toastmasters to learn more about speechcraft in general. And today we're focusing on humor. We brought you two esteemed members, Steve and Valerie, who are known throughout the district for their emphasis on humor. Joining me today is my fellow podcaster, Lee Vaughn, to my right. And we will kick it off today with some questions to dive deep into humor, starting with each of their backgrounds. I'd like each of them to talk about how they got into humorous speaking and what was it about their background that made them pursue it. Starting with Steve, and am I pronouncing your name correctly? Is it Steve today or tomorrow?
Today is a name.
Excellent.
Today is a name. So what got me into humor? I actually always wanted to be funny. Growing up, I struggled in school. I probably had a learning disability, but in those days, they didn't really know what it was. So I would compensate the best I could by trying to be the class clown. And a lot of times, my humor was something that would make somebody cringe. Whatever popped into my head that I thought was funny, I said it. And one of the things I learned is you can do certain things if you run it by the person before you do it. Like, for instance, before we started the show, we talked about our names. And Hans, you asked me if it's today, like today, and today, tomorrow, and that type of thing. And I said yes. And we kind of laughed a little bit. And you were comfortable saying that in the introduction. On the other hand, one day I was in class or at some event, and there was somebody with a name with a whole bunch of consonants in it. And I said to that person, your name looks like an eye chart. And I thought it was funny, but they weren't ready for it, and they were kind of offended. And it's the type of thing where if I would have run it by them or maybe talk with somebody else first, it would have been okay. So what I got into comedy, I got some coaching, and I learned things like that to just make everything go a little bit more smoothly.
Mm-hmm. And I believe both of you got into it, or at least got a big kickstart into this from a comedy club in Alameda. Valerie, would you like to talk about that? I believe you have a story to say about that.
Oh, yes. I've always had a sense of humor, and my whole family has a great sense of humor. In fact, our family puts the fun in dysfunctional. Anyway, I started giving speeches and throwing humor into it and got a positive response. So I just kept doing it. I also joined Laugh Lovers to help hone my skills. And then recently, Steve and I joined a comedy workshop with a comedy club that was in Alameda. It's since closed after we performed.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should take that personally or whatever. But anyway, it was for 4 weeks and we had a blast, right, Steve? We had a blast.
Oh, it was great. It was great.
And then we had our final performance and we had a full house and it was really exciting. And the main reason I did it is not because I want to be a stand-up comedian, because heaven knows I get most of my laughs lying down. But but it was on my bucket list.
And I want to say another thing, since you're going to edit it, but I want to say this, Valerie, you're subtle with your humor too, because more than once you've said you're 6 dozen years old, and that's part of the deal. You just kind of do a little play on words, and it makes people think and kind of giggle a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about how do you go about writing a humorous speech? Where do you start, Steve?
How do I go about writing it? Actually, I just observe things, whether it's a grocery store, whether it's walking through town. I love to walk and just watch people. just observe things. We had somebody in District 57 one time at a Toastmasters Leadership Institute, Matthew Dix, and he's a master storyteller. He's a school teacher, and he gave this advice to just write things down. Write about 3 things every day that you observed, and there's a story somewhere in that where you could turn into a 5 to 7 minute Toastmaster speech, or take it outside Toastmasters into a comedy club or something like that.
Right. Thank you. Valerie, what about you?
I think the best way to write a humor speech is to talk about something you know or have experienced. You're the one who knows it best. And if something in your life happens which makes you laugh, like Steve was saying, write it down. You never know what might eventually turn into a speech. Then, once you have the humor, simply tell your story using the same, I'm going to try to do this, same structure you've been learning through Toastmasters, which is tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them. Did I get that right? Anyway, and that's been working for me.
Now, many of our members don't necessarily aspire to be a humorous speaker, but they still want to learn how to incorporate humor into a non-humorous speech. For example, a technical presentation at work. Does the same advice apply?
I've got some ideas on that. There's things you can do. I, for instance, like acronyms, and in Toastmasters, we're a real acronym organization, and sometimes we'll get on a roll and we'll say, if you come to this meeting, you will earn, you will get ready for TLI, you will get ready for your DTM, and we can make a whole speech on acronyms, and people outside of Toastmasters won't know what the heck we're talking about. So we can make the speech fun by making fun of the acronyms. Like, for instance, I started out a speech one time saying, when I joined Toastmasters, I was a DTM on day 1. I was a dude that's mediocre. And then the other people talk about DTMs as, what's your DTM? Don't time me. And of course, if you're outside of Toastmasters and you're watching this, DTM is an award you get at Toastmasters called the Distinguished Toastmaster. So you can take acronyms like that, or KFC for Kentucky Fried Chicken, or CPA for Certified Public Accountant, just different acronyms, and just have fun with them.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Steve. How about you, Valerie?
Well, when I was younger, I used to coordinate all the conferences, the user conferences, for a company that created software for children with auditory processing disorders and learning disabilities. The conferences had lots of presentations, and they were directed to speech pathologists, audiologists, neuroscientists. Some of the presentations were dry as dirt, but the ones that could actually throw in a little bit of humor every now and then kept the audience engaged. That is what you need to do. You have to add a little bit of humor. It's got to come from somewhere. Otherwise, you're going to bore your audience to death. They aren't going to learn anything. So it really helps, just a little bit.
Great. Thank you for that insight from both of you. What humorous speakers have inspired you or could serve as a role model for others? And that's to Steve.
Okay. I've got 2 in Toastmasters, or all 3 of mine are Toastmasters. When I joined Toastmasters, I immediately heard Dennis Dawson speak, a past district governor, and he was hilarious. And he's not only talented, he works hard. He puts a lot of work into writing and wordsmith and things like that. And then Ray Egan won a lot of speech contests. He's won the district contest several times. he is very funny. And then right here, I'm looking at Valerie right now, and Valerie is super funny also. And all three of you, Dennis, Ray, and Valerie, you all inspire me.
Thank you for that.
Thanks.
Valerie, what about you?
Well, along with Steve, I like comedians like Jim Gaffigan. Are you familiar with Jim Gaffigan?
I am, yeah.
He doesn't use foul language. He talks about his life and finds humor in his life. And this is pretty much what I do. I talk about my life and I find humor in everything. And let's see, like changing careers and oral surgery, believe it or not, dating. And I've been single all my life, so we're talking in the double digits. And my mother's dementia. Yes, you can find humor in dementia. But Jim Gaffigan talked about his wife's brain surgery. And he was able to find humor in it, which is kind of amazing. And sometimes you have to, something that serious, it brings attention to either the brain surgery or the dementia, but it also keeps people engaged so they'll want to continue to listen and learn more about it.
Great, thank you.
Special tricks. Are there any tricks you've seen from other speakers that either you feel either worked or don't work? Steve?
Well, there's several tricks that work. Vocal variety is a big one. Sometimes starting to whisper and people will listen in more, or sometimes getting a little bit louder, just kind of changing the routine. But we learned that in all our speeches. I like the rule of three, where you say two things that are normal and that one thing that's kind of a surprise. Like, for instance, I did a podcast and my first guest was George Marshall. And George Marshall is a well-known Toastmaster. And he's really well-known and really a solid person. So I was kind of nervous starting out with him. And I interviewed him. I thought the interview went really well. George thought the interview went real well. But we absolutely never found out if the interview went well or not because I forgot to hit record. So it's the rule of three. If I would have said two things, it would have been all right. If I would have said four things, it might have been too much. But saying three things works on that. And then what doesn't work? While I don't consider myself a prude, too much foul language kind of dilutes things. And it's used more gratuitously now. That said, I'm not totally against any foul language or in a comedy sketch, but picking the right spot. And I heard a woman in her 70s tell a story, and God bless her, she dropped one F-bomb. And it was perfect. It was just, in her story, it was absolutely perfect. Where somebody else, where every other word is inappropriate, then it's not as funny. So it's more about picking your spots than anything else.
Thank you, Steve. How about you, Valerie?
Just so you know, I'm not the woman in her 70s who dropped it. Just saying. So now I do have a potty mouth. I do. However, you have to know your audience. And I've listened to, during our performance at the comedy show, there were a few comedians who the language was so foul. After a while, I didn't think it was funny. It wasn't funny at all because it was just so disgusting. And like Steve, I'm not a prude, but enough is enough. And Steve mentioned it was more gratuitous, and I totally agree with that. Yeah. I think what truly works is you have comedians like everybody on the Carol Burnett show. I still watch their skits because they are so hilarious and they're clean. You don't have to be, yeah. But that's what works for me. If it's honest to goodness humor without insulting anybody. Oh, that's another thing. We had one person give a speech, it was supposed to be a comedy speech, but it was all political. It didn't really work.
Yeah.
So again, you've got to know your audience.
I've been waiting to get to this question. Has there ever been a time you felt you really killed it, or has there been a time where you kind of died or it fell flat? Steve, you first.
Time where I killed it. I'll start where I fell flat. And it wasn't really a comedy speech. It was a Toastmasters project. And it was when we were first getting comfortable with PowerPoint and doing slides. And I got to know the slides really well. But I didn't prepare enough because the slides were going to be my cue cards. And when I would see this slide on this, I would know what to say. And that's a trap that you fall into, because what you have to do is you have to know your message and your verbiage before you know the slides. It's the opposite of what I thought it was. So that's what I did. That's when I fell flat. And then I actually felt, I'm not going to say I killed it, but I felt I did really well when we did the comedy act at the comedy club. And that's because I just really over prepared. I would go at home, and it was only 5 minutes, so it wasn't like a big time commitment. But I'd do it 4 or 5 times a day in my living room, just go through the whole thing over again. And so by the time I got up there, if anything went wrong, if I got heckled or anything like that, I would get thrown off for a second, but I could pick up right where I left off. So the big thing is practicing it.
Like a lot of skills, right?
But it's like anything else. It's like Derek Jeter taking ground balls. No matter how good he is, he still takes ground balls every day.
Sure. Valerie?
I'm going to do what Steve did and tell where I fell flat. First, I was preparing for a district competition for humorous speech. And I thought my speech was pretty funny. So I gave it to this club to practice, and not one laugh, not one giggle. I heard crickets. It was so deflating. I don't know what I did wrong. Maybe I didn't have enough energy in my speech or something. I still don't know to this day what I did wrong, but I fell flat, and it was. But then I learned from the comedy workshop that when you fall flat on a joke or something, you make a joke about it.
Yeah.
And that works. Now, what I think I did right in the comedy workshop is I started it out with, let's see, I said, I threw my arms out and I welcomed everybody. And I said, I have to tell you something. I got implants. And I threw my chest out and my arms were wide. And everybody's woo, 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 woo. And I looked at the audience, and then I looked at my chest and I said, no, not breast implants, dental implants. And it worked. And I started to show my teeth and everything. It worked. And I got a pretty good positive response from that. And that made me giggle.
Nice. Thank you.
As we wrap up, is there anything that the two of you would like to impart to our viewers about your own personal humorous speaking journey? Starting with you, Steve.
All right. Thank you, Hans. It's not about killing it. It's not about going out there and just making the audience just laugh like crazy. It's fun when that happens, but it's all about jumping out of your comfort zone. And it was kind of like Valerie said earlier, I had a bucket list item to do stand-up comedy, but I'm not going to make a career out of it. But it was one more step out of my comfort zone. I feel like it's something I've conquered. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do improv. So the last three things, I've done storytelling, where I've gotten on a stage, I've done stand-up comedy, and the next thing I'm going to do is improv. And whatever it is, we get over our fears and we get better at things by just experiencing them. And then the other thing that happens is, if it goes poorly, nobody gets hurt in this type of thing. If I would have gone up there on that Thursday evening and bombed, everybody would have gone home. The next day they would have gone to work, and they might have said to somebody over coffee, "Boy, I saw somebody last night that really wasn't funny," but who cares? It just doesn't matter. And it's just all about the experience and having a good time.
Thank you, Steve. How about you, Valerie?
Sure.
Well, I'm going to continue trying to be funny. I will continue, of course, with Toastmasters, which I love because it gives me an outlet to speak. I don't do a lot of the leadership part of Toastmasters because at 6 years old, I don't really want to be a leader anymore. I just want to have fun. And but doing the stand-up comedy, although I get most of my laughs lying down, doing the stand-up comedy was, as I said, on my bucket list, and I had a blast. And I think if everybody could just try it, like Steve said, step out of your comfort zone, just give it a shot. It was so much fun. It was such a rush to see all my friends out there laughing with me, not just at me, but with me. It was a blast. It truly was. And another thing that was so cool about the workshop is we got to see the other students progress and shine. I think everyone in our workshop shone. They were wonderful. Now it's on to my next item on my bucket list, I guess.
All right.
This has been an outstanding program to really dive deep into humor and what it takes to become more humorous. So with that, we'll close the program, and we hope you join us next episode in our Speak, Lead, and Grow podcast series. Thank you, and good night.